o'clock on Wednesday, December 4th for the Aviation Advisory Board meeting, and we'll call it to order. We do have a quorum. And Scott, would you like to begin with your normal comments?
I will. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm the Lawrence Airport Manager, and welcome to the December 4th meeting of the Aviation Advisory Board. And I've just got a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. City staff and aviation board members will be in person at City Hall. Virtual participation is allowed for any participant, including staff and the public. Live public comment can be made in person or at City Hall or virtually using the Zoom link. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. If you're on Zoom, please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this meeting is disabled, and all chats will go directly to city staff. When the chair calls for in-person public comment, individuals should indicate if they wish to speak, and staff will direct you to the podium. Individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak, and please state your name before speaking. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And now I'll turn the meeting back over to our board chair, Clancy Maloney.
Okey doke. And welcome to our 5th. The first item is to receive the draft of the minutes from the October 2nd meeting, and I do have corrections.
Yes.
Let me make sure I get it straight here.
For the folks online, I'm sorry to interrupt, Clancy. Are you getting audio? Jeff Coleman, can you hear us?
Okay, now?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, so sorry.
Okay, on the minutes, we need to correct the nominations. The sequence was that Ron Renz nominated Jim Laster, but there was no second. Sarah Thompson nominated me, Clancy Maloney, and I think Carrie Gooch seconded, but if anybody else has a different memory, let me know. And other than that, I have no corrections to the minutes unless somebody else has some. Okay? Do we need to vote on that or anything? We're good? Okay. And I guess next is public comment. Doug Tillman.
I'm Doug Tillman. I'm an aircraft owner and hangar tenant, and have been involved with Lawrence Pilots Association. And I would just like to reinforce the importance of extending taxiway delta to the north end of runway 1 with a turnaround area there. I know it's on the capital improvement priorities list. It's pretty high on that list, if not the highest item. And we need to keep it there. It's a safety issue. And we should address it as such and make sure that in our fundraising for that, we make that point that it is a safety concern to have to back taxi on that runway in order to take off to the south, or possibly to overrun 1533 farther and have to back taxi to get back. We need to make sure that that project is in the new airport master plan, so that it's reflected there when we go seek funding for that. I understand from, my mind just went blank, from Scott, that we are seeking funding for that for a planning project. So I was a little disappointed to see that it was projected to be maybe 5 years down the road. I'd really like to see that get done within the next couple of years, if possible. It really is a safety concern because it limits the utility of that runway, and that means there are occasionally intersection conflicts. There was one a couple of weeks ago where planes were landing on 3-3 and I was wanting to take off on 1, and people just don't use 119 very much for that reason, I think. So that's a strong recommendation. Let's keep that as a really high priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody else? Okay. Let's see, agenda items. Receive an update on the apron rehabilitation. And I guess, Scott, I don't know who's doing that.
I'll be glad to introduce it. We've got Brett Holt from Garver in attendance tonight that's going to walk us through some updates. But just real quick news, I'm not sure I posted it to the agenda. I posted a lot of stuff, but back in October, we did receive what FAA calls a go letter in terms of funding for this project. I think I mentioned it at our October meeting that was kind of the last step that we were waiting on to make sure we got this project funded in fiscal year 2025. So we received that, and it was really optimistic in terms of the funding. I believe it came in, Brad, at around 1.8 million from FAA. So that amount paired with our Kansas Airport Improvement Project grant of around 800,000 should put us in good shape funding-wise for this project next year. Brett's been working hard to finalize the construction plans. I posted the 90% plans to the agenda tonight, and he's going to walk us through kind of the construction phasing again. I know we talked about it, probably last February maybe or so, but we've kind of updated the plans a little bit since then, and Brett's going to walk us through that tonight. So, Brett Holt.
See if that PowerPoint comes up there.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, yeah, we can start on the next slide there.
You're not actually sharing that. I don't know what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I need to share.
Hit the share button there, yeah.
Yep, you're right.
There we go.
Folks online should be able to see the apron project now. Great. I think you're good to go.
Yeah, so this screen, or this slide here is kind of a recap of what we've got in this project. The biggest portion was getting Taxiway C pavement rehabilitation incorporated into this plan set with the KAIP funding we got for Taxiway C. We show a 2.5-inch mill and overlay on here, and that was kind of based on record drawings and what we thought might be out there. That pavement is in worse shape than the apron, and we got our geotechnical cores back, and it actually showed 9 inches to 11 inches of asphalt, which was quite a bit more than what we were seeing in record drawings. So we've actually gone ahead and increased that to a 4-inch mill and overlay. That'll reduce some of that partial depth patching and take care of a lot of the larger cracks we see in there. So that's kind of the big update here. 90% final design went in back on October 14th. And then here in a couple slides, we'll talk about where we're at with issued for bid set. Let's see, this next slide just kind of recaps what the two add alternates we've got in the plans are for reconstructing that fueling apron, and then the potential to expand that fueling apron with add alternate number 2.
Does that mean that it's included in the bill, or what does that mean by an alternate?
It'll be an add alternate that contractors will bid on. We wanted to include it in this one, but it is concrete, so potentially have a different sub, some additional mobilization. But while they're out there working on the apron, we wanted to go ahead and get this in there and see if we can get some better pricing with that.
Cool.
I think we're optimistic, Jim, that since we've got kind of some unexpected funds from FAA, that we'll be able to award this add alternate with the bid.
Awesome.
All right, you can go to the next one there. Let's see, so these are the engineer's estimates that we had at that 90% submittal. And actually, these are a little bit newer than the 90% submittal, with the exception of Schedule 2. That one will increase a little bit with the change to the 4-inch. Not a significant amount, since we will be able to reduce that partial depth patching, which will also hopefully help speed up the construction of Taxiway C there. FAA did have a few minor comments after they reviewed the 90% plans, and those have all been addressed. So Caleb, my counterpart in Wichita, is doing his QC review this week, and we should have that uploaded for FAA review on Friday of this week.
Brett and I did have a meeting with FAA planning staff and an engineer back in October, I believe.
Let's see, going on to the next one. Might be hard to read some of this on here, but this is just kind of showing how these projects are split up, since we're going to be using a mix of KIP funding and FAA funding in the blue section, and then just KIP funding for the red section for taxiway C there. Let's see, I don't think I had anything else on there, but if you go to the next slide, this one kind of gets into the phasing here. I know with taxiway C on the west side of runway 119, that's kind of the only access there. So we're going to be making sure when we're getting ready for that phase, everybody knows. That western side, since it's just a mill and fill there, we don't anticipate any patching on that side. Should only take a couple days for them to mill and then replace that asphalt. Once they're able to do that, we can open that back up so aircraft can get out of there. We'll still have to have that runway closed while they're finishing up the east side within the safety area, but hopefully for access from the west side of the airport, that should just be a couple days where they can't get in and out.
Yeah, I've got significant questions about the other phasing on the main ramp as well. You know, your phase, the purple, which goes in front of the maintenance hangars and the T hangars, if you're doing all that at the same time, you're basically closing the airport for anybody in T hangars and the maintenance hangars and the Hetrick hangar on the far east side. And that's over a month process. There's better ways to do that. You need to leave at least one access for the T hangars open. If you leave one access for the T hangars, all the T hangars are going to get access to the airport. And you need to leave access for the maintenance facility somehow. And
Yes.
you need to rethink that phase 5. I think that's very poorly planned.
So we've got 21 calendar days for that phase 5, which is that blue one there. We've set it up to where there's enough room from the Hetrick hangar to get out into what's shown. I believe that's phase 3 in the green.
Yeah, that's the far east hangar. What about the maintenance hangars and what about the T hangars?
So
They're going to be shut out of the airport for 21 days.
the T hangars, as they're doing taxiway C, once they get onto the apron, we'll pull those barricades back. So while they're in the taxiway C portion of that phase, they'll be able to use taxi lane A to get onto the apron.
So there's a phase 5A, B, and C in there?
Essentially, yeah, we'll pull that
Well, you
back.
need to see that, you need to show that in there because that's just wrong, the way it's currently shown in that plan, my opinion.
Okay, yeah, we can make that clear for everyone, so
Yeah,
everyone can see that access.
yeah.
Let's see, and then for fuel trucks to get to the fueling apron, we'll have some minor coordination in phase 1, just so contractors know that they'll be outside of the area they're working in, but they'll be around. And then in phase 5 in the blue there, really the only time they won't be able to get access to the fuel farm is when there's that tack coat on the ground. When it's a milled surface, still thick enough asphalt to get fuel trucks back there. It's just the one day or so where.
Well, couldn't the fuel trucks go in by the gate, by the T hangars and go that way? If you planned it well, the fuel trucks would have access all the time. The T hangars would have access all the time. And you could have Hetrick's maintenance hangar to have access all the time. But you got to replan how you're doing your phase 5.
Yeah, so for the fuel trucks, it will just be the one day where they're actively working in front of that fuel farm.
Okay.
When the tack coat's down, that they can't actually get
That makes sense, yeah.
So if an airplane wants to come out of the T hangars, they need to be pulled out rather than taxi out over the milled surface, or what?
So no, there will be access to the T hangars
Okay.
on a paved surface.
100% of the time?
Okay.
Okay. How about Hetrick's maintenance hangars?
That one will be a little bit tougher being in the middle there. We can show kind of a separate split out of the phase 5 like you had mentioned. But with the contractor, it's really best if they can do those long
I
runs.
understand that, but you want to shut down Lloyd's business for a month? You can't do that. I don't think he could accept
That's not
that.
the plan, Ron. It's just a mill and overlay project. This is not a complete apron shutdown and reconstruction project.
But you're saying he's going to be shut down for 21 days.
No.
That's what I just heard.
Just while they're actively working in that area with,
So
With-
not for the
so-
full 21 days.
no, not likely, no, because they'll mill, and that whole area, milling and paving, they can probably get all of that milled in 2 to 3 days, and then paving in about the same amount of time.
Okay.
They'll be working in other areas, taking out the existing tie downs and things like that well, they still have pavement on the ground. So it won't be full closure to that area for the full 21 days.
But once you mill it, we wouldn't be able to tax it. We'd have to pull aircraft across there, or would we even be able to do that?
You'd be able to pull them across there on the milled surface.
So you got 3 days of shutting it down, then we got another 3 days of overlay. Best case scenario, 6 days without weather.
Yeah, so in this area here, where we're looking at, for them to, like if they're milling up here, this whole area will probably take them 3 days to mill.
Where?
In here, it's gonna be a day. And then they'll come back and pave. And the plan is for them to pave these long runs east to west. So once they get just this section down here is, yeah, probably 2 days to pave.
Can you point it out up here?
Oh,
Just show it with your mouse, because we can't see your finger.
So Lloyd, you'd have to pull them out and run them up someplace else then? You
yeah.
couldn't do it any place? Yeah, exactly.
As long as we can get access across it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll be coordinated to make sure
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, and I think Eurotech would have the same issues with that as well.
theirs might even be worse
Uh,
with helicopters.
Yeah,
They'd have to get pulled out and
They got
start up
lots-
someplace else.
they got a lot smaller tires
Yeah,
than airplanes. So the taxiway C is going to be done before the apron part of that blue.
Yeah, they'll move directly from the pink phase into the blue phase there on taxiway C.
Okay, okay. And then for the pink phase of taxiway C, you're thinking just a couple of days for the west side of the airport to be
Yes, yep.
shut down? Okay. Would Lloyd be able to get fuel trucks across there to because he's got to get fuel trucks across there to service Lifestar, KU, and the Great Plains hangar?
Yep. For really any time, unless there's once they get that tack coat on the ground,
Yeah.
then we'd have to wait till they're done paving, but
So
that,
Lloyd, you could, I assume you could just station a fuel truck over there for that
Yeah.
couple of days? Yeah.
Assuming we could go across the grass.
yeah, you could pre-position or something someplace else, right?
In KU, we just work with them if we have to move them over to the west side
Yeah.
during that period.
I mean, the big one is going to be fuel trucks for Lifestar, because you fuel them 2-3 times a day.
So we keep the one truck down there for night, so we just utilize that during the day and
Okay.
just have to take a pickup over to get to it.
Okay.
let's see. And then if you go to the next slide there, that kind of shows the, really the breakdown of what's open, what's closed during those phases. And like we mentioned, we can get that overall phasing exhibit updated to kind of show
Yeah,
how
I-
long everything is going to be.
Yeah, I recommend you do that so the contractors can bid it appropriately, because if they're assuming they're going to do all the blue at the same time, and then we're telling them they can't do that, that's going to be a cost overrun, and so you ought to put it in their plans so they can bid it properly, so that it doesn't end up being a cost overrun for the city. So,
There is a construction safety and phasing plan that will be prepared as part of the project. I don't
Correct,
think
yeah.
we've posted it yet, but we can share that with the board too.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Scott, when is this going to go to bid, do we know?
We'll let Brett talk about that.
Okay,
Right now, we're anticipating kind of early February. Grant applications based on bid need to be in by April 1st. So that should give us plenty of time to
Okay.
advertise and get those bids back in and everything
okay,
submitted to the FAA.
and construction over the summer, or,
Yep, that would be what we're shooting for, probably that, mid-July timeframe by the time we get all the grant funding in.
Okay. Jim, any questions?
You want to come to the microphone, Doug, so people online can hear you?
I saw in the plan that the tie-down anchors are going to be removed so you can mill off the asphalt. Are those going to be replaced?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they'll be going back in. It'll be pretty similar configuration to what's out there now. There'll be a few less tie downs just because right now there's some within taxiway B, so we won't be putting those back in since we can't use them, but it'll be a pretty similar configuration to what's out there right now.
Would that be the same type of pilot? In other words, we'd have access to hook a rope or whatever?
Yeah, in that spec, the contractor will install a rope with those tie downs.
Clancy, going back to the bid award, it's all dependent as well on kind of FAA not the reauthorization, but the budget authorization.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, Congress passed the FAA reauthorization, but they've yet to pass a budget. FAA awards grants based upon bid. So that's why we have to bid the project first, and then they will write the grant agreements. But that's assuming that they are funded. We're hoping Congress will pass a budget when they reconvene. So there's that caveat.
okay.
And Brett, Clancy, you had some questions.
I did.
Yesterday regarding
Yeah.
kind of access from the T-hangers. So Brett put together this
Somehow I
exhibit,
couldn't
which
get
is
the
rather
picture
a
of the
large
whole
file.
airport.
So
Yeah.
So on the diagram, so I was confused about how we're going to move around the airport in little airplanes.
Yep, so during that phase 2, it does extend the taxi route quite a bit to get over to 1533.
Okay,
That phase, I think we have in there at 14 calendar days though, so it won't be too terribly long, but yeah, we'll use taxiway D and then taxiway A to get to
Okay.
1533.
Yeah, to runway 15, it doesn't add anything, but to get to 33, it adds
3 it does.
quite a bit. But it's better than having no access.
yeah, well, provided that we still have that access
Yeah.
behind Eurotech to get there, yeah.
Right.
So, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay,
Because remember, we had the T-hangers closed down for a long time, the last project.
Yes.
So we're all very sensitive to that now. Right, Clancy?
of course not.
And then Brett had I think a special print. We're doing the master plan work, and as part of that work, we had an aerial survey company out at the airport this summer, and he printed off a nice aerial overview of the airport for us.
From the aerial survey.
Oh, nice.
Oh, great.
So if I had an office, I would put it up in it, Melissa, but I guess when I do have an office, that'd be something nice to hang.
Okay. I guess, any more questions or issues? Well, that is really nice. And it's green.
Right after it rained.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else questions?
Absolutely.
For Brett? Okay. The next item is the master plan project update, and I want to say a couple things before we get started on it. Things were a little confused over the summer about who was on the board and who wasn't on the board, and now we know who's on the board. And apparently a couple of documents, the Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 of the reports that are going to the FAA on, just a minute, the survey, the condition report and the projection of what's going to be happening in the future didn't get attached to the October agenda meeting. It's just the overall report. So what I would like to do at some point is make sure that everybody on the new board has copies of those so they can look at them. I looked at it today, and courtesy of John Rostas, who sent them to me, and I would like to, Scott, if we could, I'd like to make sure everybody gets a copy. I had a couple of items that I'll pass on to either you, Scott, or John directly, in case there's anything else that needs to go that direction. And then with that, now that we've got everybody on board new and they can have a look, it's about 90 pages of material. So I guess at that point, I would like to make sure that everybody gets it soon and passes their comments on soon. From what I gathered from John today, the FAA already has these. Scott has already given input to the FAA, and it may be another month or so before they come back. Is that correct, Scott?
On the forecast
Yeah.
chapter, yes.
On the forecast stuff. And after that, then there will probably be another stakeholders meeting sometime early in the year. So that's, if I've got anything wrong, somebody correct me quickly. So that's what I anticipate will occur. So if everybody would please get a hold of these documents, we can get them out to you in a day or so, and either get back to me or Scott so that the comments can be passed along. Okay.
How are you going to get them to us, Scott? Are you going to email them to us? Or?
So just a little bit more background, since we do have some new board members. It was in January of this year that we kicked off the master planning process for the airport. And some of you, like Ron, I know were at the
Involved.
open house at the terminal that kind of started the master planning process. So Garver is working on that, and John Rostas is aviation planner with Garver. He's based out of Birmingham. That's kind of the lead planner, and then Garver has all sorts of other folks working on it as well. But he plans to attend our February 5th meeting to provide the kind of the newly convened aviation board, more of an update in terms of what a master plan is, what we've prepared so far, and what are the next steps in finalizing this document. So I will send out to all the board members the chapters that were pushed out in June of this year on, I think it was the inventory chapters. And then hopefully by our February meeting, we'll have the forecast chapter ready to submit as well. As Clancy mentioned, we're currently in, I would say, discussions with FAA on our aviation forecast data. John and I have had a couple meetings with FAA planning staff at the Central Region, and I wanted to provide just a brief update that, we've been able to tap into our airport monitoring system that we installed out at the airport last year to provide really accurate data to FAA on what our counts and activity levels are at our airport. So we think that's really going to help us in kind of pushing back on what they've presented to us so far. So hopefully we'll get a positive response from Central Region staff on that. And also the consultant, Eric Jacobs, who put together the airport monitoring system. He was also at the KA conference. Some of you may have heard him talk. Has been helpful in terms of providing more information to FAA staff as well. So John's not here tonight. He'll be here in our next meeting to give us more of an update. He did provide just kind of this one-page summary of kind of where we stand with the project to date. So the work that we're currently working on is really this forecast approval from FAA staff, and then the next deliverables, as he mentions here, would be the facility requirements after we kind of get that approval in that chapter. So typically airport master plans take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So in my last conversation with John, he plans to hopefully wrap this up in late spring, early summer of 2025. So that's kind of the time frame. And then, as Clancy mentioned, we had a stakeholder committee formed. Several of the older board members were on that. So we'll have to kind of reconvene that group as well and probably add some of the newer board members to that stakeholder group going forward.
Okay, great. I have a couple of minor comments on the Chapter 2 inventory for people to look at. And Scott, I think you had already addressed one of them, which is the wildlife fence, is not a safety perimeter at this point, although it's upgradable to that. And then the other issue, the other question I had is this a picture of our fuel farm at Lawrence? It doesn't look like it to me.
Which one is it?
It's on
I don't
page
think I posted
35.
that chapter.
It doesn't look like ours.
Yeah, I can check in with John.
Yeah.
Clancy, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
And, any comments, you can feel free to
Yeah.
directly email him
Yeah.
out as well.
So that's all I had. If we need to go further on the master plan update, I guess. Is that correct?
That's all I had, Clancy.
Okay.
We've got a packed agenda tonight, so,
Is
yeah.
this the report that's tied to the funding that we're getting from the FAA?
Well, not directly, but the end of the master plan will have a list of, capital improvement projects for the next 5, 10, 15 years. So it's a key component to FAA funding because they look at our master plan and our CIP, airport improvement documents, to guide their funding predictions and their funding for our airport projects. So, yes and no, I guess, is the answer. It's a critical piece to predicting, as well as for the city, budgeting for the future, what we need to prepare for in our own capital improvement plan for the airport going forward. And, Clancy and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Why hasn't the city done more from the 2012 master plan and all that huge list of projects that plan had in it? Well, all of us have to work together to make sure we prioritize projects, get them funded from FAA, from the state of Kansas, and from the city of Lawrence. It's certainly a team approach funding-wise when it comes to capital improvement projects at the airport. So the master plan is certainly an important document that provides a roadmap for the future of the airport, Jim.
I was just trying to make sure we have the right lens that we're looking at this paper.
Yeah, Scott, as I understand, the master plan really is, it's a planning document, sort of like the city's master plan. You're not going to do everything in that master plan, but if it's not in the master plan, it's very difficult to get done.
Yeah.
Is that
correct.
pretty correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. So like in the last year when we completed the runway feasibility project, they were asking us, well, is this in your master plan? Yeah, it was in the 2012 master plan. So we could have, tried to pursue funding for that project last year, but, we haven't yet.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's
exactly
all.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we want to make sure, I think, Doug pointed out taxiway extension, and that's one I've been harping on for 15 years. So we want to make sure that's in the master plan for
Scott hears
sure.
about it about once a week from me.
Good, excellent.
Okay.
No, I think I've been part of the master plan almost since the beginning, not on the steering committee, but I've been to all the meetings, and I think they're doing a good job overall. So,
Okay.
be glad to review the details.
All right. Anything else on the master plan? Okay. Next is the airport minimum standards. I hope everybody had a chance to read them.
Yes.
Clancy's
Okay.
going to give a test tonight.
Yeah, there's a test, pop quiz. I have two things I want to say, and then we'll open it up, and I think this is going to be an ongoing process. I would like to see an expanded list of reserved terms, because I had trouble reading it, trying to figure out what the capitalized terminology was for. And then the other thing is, I could only see in two places language about leases and subleases, and I would like to understand what I missed. So if anybody else has notes, go for it. Or
Well,
Scott,
we do
you
have a
wanna say something?
consultant on board tonight, Jeff Coleman with the Aviation Management Consulting Group that provided the red line version. And let me just provide just a little bit of background on
Okay.
why we are at this point tonight, because Sarah had emailed me some questions, and Lloyd had asked me some questions today, why are we doing this? So it really came up about a year and a half ago when I was at the Four States Conference that I listened to a presentation on agricultural operations at airports. And then I started to dig into our own minimum standards that we had posted on our website. And I realized there wasn't any discussion of aerial spraying operations in the minimum standards at our airport, at least the version that we had posted. So at that point, about this time last fall, Jeff Coleman with the Aviation Management Consulting Group had put together kind of a laundry list of projects that, or we had worked together on a laundry list of projects that we needed help on. And his firm really specializes in assisting general aviation airports with management. They do this across the country. They're experts at this. Melissa and I attended their general aviation training this summer at the General Aviation Conference that was put on by AAAE. This is what they do. So we got them under contract to review our minimum standards. And Jeff had provided an updated document, probably like in the early part of this year. And then it was about the same time that I discovered that the prior airport manager had been working with FAA roughly in November of 2019 on an even updated version of the minimum standards. I think he had tweaked the document based upon, and you guys know all this history of some of the parachuting operations that were planned out at the airport. So I discovered an even updated version of the minimum standards that had never gone through the approval process. We hadn't brought those to the board, hadn't brought those to the tenants, and hadn't brought that version to the governing body for adoption. So I asked Jeff to take a new fresh look at the 2019 standards that FAA had kind of signed off on, but nobody else outside of city staff had looked at. So that's kind of where we're at. And Jeff Coleman is here tonight. Jeff, if you don't know him, he's joined us in the past. He is a Lawrence High graduate. His father owned Coleman Aviation, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, at Lawrence Airport for a long time, and they are most experienced and knowledgeable about Lawrence Regional Airport. And I'll turn it over to you, Jeff. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I am a graduate of Lawrence High, grew up in Lawrence, went to KU. I still bleed blue, watch every game that I can get out here in Colorado. AMCG, as Scott mentioned, we've been providing management consulting services to airport sponsors for 26 years. I've been consulting for 31 years, been in the industry a long time. I've known Ron about as long as I've been in the industry. And really appreciate and enjoy the opportunity to do some work back in my hometown. As Scott mentioned, we were first engaged to do a review and comment on the airport's 2017 minimum standards. When that 2019 version was provided, we updated the document to reflect those changes. Those are in that red line version, are included in that as well. We were then asked by the city to go ahead and update the minimum standards documents based upon our comments and recommendations in the review. It's important to understand that there are some changes that we recommended that we haven't made as of yet. Those included the use of the terms suitable, adequate, and appropriate that are currently utilized in the document. Those are very squishy words that leave a lot of ambiguity, both from the city side as well as commercial operators side. We typically encourage airport sponsors to be very specific and state specifically how much land, how much terminal, how much hangar, how much gallons and fuel storage facility, so that there's no gray in whether or not a commercial aeronautical operator is meeting your minimum standards. We also had a few provisions that are in the current minimum standards that we typically recommend to be pulled out into the rules and regs so that those are applicable to all your primary management compliance documents. And that's It doesn't harm the current document the way it stands, but if you want to take that next step, that would have to be done as well. Just as a little refresher of what minimum standards are, and this might answer the one question about leasing, lessees and sublessees. So a minimum standards document, the audience are entities that desire to engage in a commercial aeronautical activity at the airport. It does not touch non-commercial entities. It does not touch non-aeronautical entities. These are focused on commercial aeronautical providers, commonly known as FBOs and SASOs. And they establish the city's minimum qualifications and requirements that these entities must meet in order to engage in a commercial aeronautical activity. The role of these standards is to provide a fair and reasonable opportunity without unjust discrimination. That's one of your airport sponsor assurance obligations. For applicants to qualify or otherwise compete to occupy land and improvements at your airport and to engage in these commercial aeronautical activities. It's also designed to ensure safe, quality of service, and compliance with applicable legal requirements. The purpose of these documents is to protect the city, the airport sponsor, the consumers of these commercial aeronautical activities, and other FBOs and SASOs to create this level playing field. It also contributes towards the provision of high quality, safe, and efficient aeronautical products, services, and facilities, contributes to the overall operational efficiency and reputation of the airport, and promotes orderly development of the airport. Now, while minimum standards aren't required by the FAA, they certainly are highly encouraged. In fact, the FAA has an advisory circular, AC 150-5190-8. It used to be 7. It was just updated here in the last couple years. And this advisory circular focuses on minimum standards. Further, industry associations encourage airport sponsors to have minimum standards. That includes NATA, the National Air Transportation Association, AOPA, and MBAA. Besides, obviously, your input, and I'm welcome to answer any questions you might have. Obviously, before any changes are finalized, we do encourage the city attorney to also review this document because it does create this legally binding agreement between you and your commercial aeronautical operators, because typically in your lease agreement or your operating permit, you'll specify an obligation to maintain compliance with the minimum standards as they may be amended from time to time. So I'll leave my comments there and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sarah?
Hi, could you say the advisory circular number again? I didn't know if it was in the document.
You bet. It's AC 150/5190-8.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I have another question. It's slightly rhetorical, but should we be concerned almost the whole thing is redlined?
No, and it's not all red line. There is a lot of red line. So there's two things that create a lot of the red line. One is that there are some paragraphs that are moved, and that creates a lot of red line. The later part of the document that you see these major sections all red, those are the ones from 2019 that I moved into this document. So it looks like a lot of red, but it's not as much as it looks.
Okay. Anybody else? I've got one question. Go ahead, Ron.
The big question I've got, Jeff, is there's nothing in the document that defines activities as commercial activities. And I think that needs to be very explicit, because we're not talking about private activities, we're talking about commercial activities, correct? It doesn't say that.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I believe in the very first paragraph, it talks about commercial aeronautical activities, and then shortens that to the word activities that is used throughout.
Ron, there's...
I'll make sure you're exactly right, Ron. That is an important importance of this document, and I'll make sure that it does say that.
Ron, there's also a list of terminology at the end that says that.
Yeah, I got to the terminology late today, and I kind of skipped
Yeah, the
those sections.
question I asked Scott earlier today, Jeff, was, is there anything in here about drone operations?
No, there isn't.
Should there be?
And certainly drone operations can be both commercial and non-commercial.
Yeah.
And so these are designed, again, focus on the commercial side, and it's not designed to govern the drone activity in your airspace. That is governed by the FAA.
Yeah.
There's already requirements that any drone activities within 5 miles of an airport get approval of the airport manager. So if your concern is about activities above the airport or near the airport, this is not the appropriate document.
Well, I think KU is already operating a drone nearby, right, Scott?
Yeah, KU already has an
Already
agreement
has an
with the...
operation on the field.
yeah. KU already has an agreement to
I don't know if that
operate.
would be considered a commercial
I don't know
activity
either.
or not. Yeah, but I think Clancy brings up probably a good question, given the changing nature of this technology. I don't know, Jeff, have you seen drone operations covered in any other airport's minimum standards?
We did an unmanned aircraft minimum standards for an airport out in Florida in the Jacksonville area because they had a lot of testing going on in that. But that was more of a rules and regulations focus than a commercial activity focus. And that's probably where discussions around drones should really be placed, is in your rules and regs to make it a safe operation at your airport.
Okay.
I know, just since I've been airport manager, we had a local company email me about the potential for like drone flight testing operations at our airport. And I know the Salina Airport is currently working with Textron on some advanced air mobility flight test operations. So just something to think about, I guess.
Yep. And advanced air mobility is a type of aircraft, and if they're going to be utilizing it for air taxi operations, then you have minimum standards for air taxi operations at your airport, if they're going to be based at your airport.
Jeff, I got a clarification, I guess might turn into a question. So in here, we talk about, in each subset of these, it says licenses and certificates. However, we don't call out very specifically what they should be, like a 135 operation, a 145 operation. And it just states that the operators need to have it placed in the public area. Is this a discretion, or who's the person that is in charge of saying that that is an appropriate certificate? Because I know technically you can do avionics work or maintenance work without being under a repair station, but you need to then take the onus on the person. So how or why, like Lloyd's a 145 repair station, that's different than having, Joe Bag of Donuts working out of his tea hanger. So my lens at this would like to see some more clarification based on, specifically since we do have repair stations on our field, to have it be a little more clear or state who will be able to say that that's an appropriate certificate, because what we don't want is guys working on the weekend on Sunday afternoon as commercial, avionics or maintenance or whatever.
Or trailers.
Yeah, right. And I would like to lean on this if I can, where it would state something a little bit more clear on, because there's clear definitions on the FAA of what that is. So I just don't know how you've handled that in the past.
Yeah, so on the air taxi side, obviously you have to be a 135 operator that's governed by the FAA, where, as you very appropriately stated, in aircraft maintenance, it's a choice of an operator whether or not they want to become a 145 repair station. The FAA recently ruled, there was a case in Arizona where an airport stated that a air tour operator had to be a 135 operator. And that was what the FAA deemed an overstep of the airport sponsor to require an entity that's not technically required to be a 135 operator, an air tour operator. If you stay within 20 miles of an airport touring the area, you do not have to be a 135 air taxi operator. They took that one step further and said that in many situations, not all situations, an airport sponsor can't tell someone that they have to be a 145 repair station unless there is a specific need or requirement at that airport. And so unless you as the airport sponsor want to take that step and say all aircraft maintenance operators have to be a 145 repair station, that's why it's not called out in your past or your current minimum standards.
Well, we would have that availability to do that? That is something that we could do?
You could, your size airport is probably not at a level that could justify why you're requiring every aircraft maintenance operator to be a 145 repair station, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that if we would do that, we would potentially open ourselves up for liability, because the FAA doesn't require you to be a 145.
I know that, but I also,
And I think that'd be a bad move, personally.
I've witnessed things happen badly.
No, I know. I mean, there's a lot of successful repair stations that are not FAA certified repair stations.
Agree. I guess where I'm at is
But I agree with you about the fly-by-night guy.
roll through with this truck.
Yeah, is a different issue.
That's why I just wanted to be
yeah.
able to, because it states in here that you have to have a public area, have it placed in the operator's place of business, and if that's a truck, then that's only public while he's on the ramp. So that's where I was leaning on what that is. So, and I'm just curious, like, we have a lot of things in here that state this, but is it down to Scott's role as the airport manager, is the enforcer of these rules, or is that to the committee of us, or I don't understand where the...
Yeah, I mean, it falls on the airport manager to monitor and enforce. The tool that you typically would have is agreements that you have with existing, and certainly, the city and the city commission is your final enforcement body.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, we're an advisory board. We don't have any.
I just wanted to make sure that Scott had the teeth to be able to do something and where it did not have to go.
Yeah, I mean,
forward, 'cause-
So Kerry Gooch has a question. He has his raised hand.
Hey, Kerry.
Hey, first off, Jeff, thank you for doing this. I've kind of been doing some work with the downtown Kansas City airport, and they have a version of this that is nowhere near as good as kind of the updates that you have provided in here. So first off, I appreciate you kind of going through and doing this. This is maybe more of a question for Scott or Melissa that maybe then kind of folds into you with Jeff. One of the things I've been working with, I'm helping a new flight school kind of get up and going at the downtown Kansas City airport. And I know this is not comparing apples to apples, but like in this document, as I was reading it through, Clancy, I just want you to know I was ready for the pop quiz. So like I was hoping that was a real thing, because I kind of wanted to show off my skills. That I actually didn't read this.
Kerry, for saying that.
The FBO application part in here, and I'll give you guys a little bit of background. So again, this organization that I'm working with in Kansas City is a nonprofit that's kind of starting to go through the process of starting up a flight school. And one of the barriers that they're having with it being a new organization is like some of the financial experience qualifications that the airport has. And I noticed that there were some similarities in this document as some of the other airports around here have. And so I just kind of was curious on like the FBO application document we have in here. Scott and Melissa, maybe it's the first question for you all. Are all of the things listed in here required for like the city of Lawrence when people start things or have applications like that? And if they're not, Jeff, are all of these like normal required things that should have to be? Mainly because again, we just had problems with, providing 7-10 years of financial documents when you're a new business, and coming to a field. And I would hate for us to like not allow new businesses to start because they don't have the 5 or 7 years, financial documents or experience or something like that. So just a more of a question. And again, I don't know if that's a Scott or Melissa question or a Jeff question.
Well, Jeff helped us.
Go ahead, Scott.
Jeff helped us put together the application documents, because when I became airport manager, I realized we had these minimum standards, but we didn't really have a process for accepting new applications. And, since you've been on the board, Kerry, we've had a couple of businesses approach us with different projects. So we engaged Jeff's company to help us develop those application materials. And I think Jeff can probably speak to the question as well. Jeff?
Yeah, there's always a latitude that the airport sponsor has in reviewing the information and the application. There's not, black lines that can't be crossed. The intent of asking for more than sometimes what everyone has is that the city has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that their airport is operating in the highest and best use, that the tenants are going to have the wherewithal to pay the rents and fees for the land and improvements and the activities that they're engaged in. And without good information being submitted for the city to review and make that determination, it becomes difficult. So understand your situation, Gary, that you described, and I'm certainly a proponent of new businesses and people bringing new opportunities to airports, and certainly don't want the application to be a deterrence. There's going to be some questions you're not going to be able to answer, and then the city just needs to make an educated decision based upon the information you are able to provide.
Totally makes sense. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there as an experience we're going through right now that I was flagging as I was kind of reading this the other day.
Yeah, if I recall in the document, there's something about the minimum standards can be modified with proper consideration. There's some wording like that in there that I remember. I don't remember where it is, but and that should be in there, because you put everything in black and white, and you define it down to you've got to have uniforms and things like that. In one respect, I think we're getting too detailed. Because we shouldn't be in the business of telling people how to run their business. We should be in the business of making sure the businesses are run properly, but we shouldn't be in the business of telling them how to run their business, and that's kind of almost what this is getting to be, and that bothers me a little bit from that standpoint. You need to have detail, but you don't need to be so super specific on everything, because you need to have latitude for businesses to be creative, to make their businesses and differentiate them from other businesses. Otherwise, they don't. Being a small businessman my whole life, I understand how important that is. So.
Okay, who else? Jake?
No comment.
Jim? Sarah? All right, Carrie, do you have anything else? Okay.
How do we proceed? Do we send our
Yeah, that's the
comments
next-
to
that's the
Jeff
next
through
question.
you, Scott, or what?
Yeah, what do you want us to do?
Yeah, that's kind of the next discussion for this evening. As I mentioned to Clancy before the meeting started, we didn't expect the board to get through all 70 pages of the minimum standards tonight and review all of the red line comments. So get your comments to me, and I can kind of gather them to pass on to Jeff. I think the next steps are to get this document in front of the airport tenants, to probably call, if it is okay with the board, a meeting of the airport tenants sometime in January to review this set of minimum standards, take comments from the airport tenants at that time, and then maybe bring back a revised document at our February meeting.
Okay, so we need to find a date that'll work for that too.
If you guys want to, discuss it tonight, that's fine, or I can poll you as well. I know we're getting into an hour of our meeting. We still got a few things to discuss.
Let's poll it and see.
Yeah.
Everybody make a suggestion to Scott, okay?
Sounds good. So that's kind of the next steps. Ultimately, this board would recommend approval of the minimum standards to the governing body, and we would get them on a city commission agenda for adoption. One of the things Jim asked and Jeff addressed a little bit is enforcement, and Jeff can probably speak to this a little bit. A lot of cities have codified their minimum standards, so there's not only just the airport manager, trying to apply lease provisions to tenants at the airport, but there's also the city code that could be used as an enforcement mechanism. And I don't know if Jeff wants to speak to that at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, codification is an option. Sometimes it can be difficult. Minimum standards tend to not fit into code very easily. So lots of times rules and regs are the most common item that is codified, especially because it touches all users of the airport, exclusive of whether you are a tenant or not, and sometimes needs a stronger enforcement mechanism. I usually like to try to backdoor the codification of minimum standards by including a provision in the rules and regulations that states all entities engaged in commercial aeronautical activities at the airport must adhere to the minimum standards as may be amended from time to time. So you point to the document without specifically codifying it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us tonight, and
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
All right.
Scott, when would you like comments by? As soon as
yeah, as soon as you get to them, like I say, if we call a meeting in January, we'll kind of make sure that we've got all of your comments by that time as well. So probably by the next time certainly by our February meeting, we should have all of your comments, but I would say by the time we call a tenant meeting, it'd be nice to have the board's comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Scott, you're on for the airport manager's
so
report.
I'm not going to go through, Clancy, all the details of the airport manager's
you.
report. It's kind of lengthy, but I've posted, kind of all the updates. The one thing I did want to mention is that we've got this high school aviation club coming on Saturday, December 14th. I think we've got a pretty good program lined up for them. I could probably still use a few more pilots who want to show their aircraft. I know it's a December day, but I think what we did for the Big Brothers and Big Sisters event worked well. If we could just take the kids around to a few T-hangers. So I don't know if Doug wants to push out a message to the pilots group to see if we can get a few more planes for that day. The morning is the time frame from 9 to noon. So I think the plan is to have a presentation on aviation careers, probably like 40 minutes in the terminal, and then head out to the T-hangars. And then after that, Ron's going to show them his operations for a little bit, I think is the plan.
Yeah, we haven't really talked what the specifics were, but we need to do that so we can figure out what you want me to do.
Yep, we'll cover that. And yeah, so this club, as a reminder, was kind of spearheaded by the folks at Peaslee Tech. It's a high school aviation club composed of, any kids from Douglas County high schools. I understand they have about 17 or 18 members. I don't know how many showed up at the Hetrick event, but Katie Brown from Eurotech said they had about 17 or 18 when Eurotech hosted the club. The only other thing I want to mention tonight, and again, you can read my manager's report at your leisure, but I was out at the airport today, and I do want to get your feedback on this item. Eurotech, I know I've mentioned it in the past, was painting a fiberglass Jayhawk for us. We had secured one through the Kansas Alumni Association last year, and it's finally ready to be received at the airport. It is bright, shiny, glossy, beautiful. So I'll show you a picture here in a second, but I do want to get the board's input on kind of where to find a permanent home at the airport. But I would like to make a suggestion. My initial idea was to put it outside someplace, but this thing, I want you guys to see it in person. I mean, it's drop dead beautiful and shiny, and I'm not sure if we want to expose it to the elements, so I would propose at least an initial trial of just putting it in the terminal in front of the bay window, making sure it's secured so some K-State fan can't tip it over and destroy it on day one. But at least to see how it may work at that location, and then at our next board meeting, we can discuss how that worked. But I'm going to briefly show you guys a picture of it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
They did.
It's really wonderful.
Not sure I want to expose the bright, shiny paint to the elements. I know around town all the fiberglass Jayhawks are outside. But
Is that the same size as all the other ones?
yes, it's the same size.
And it's
but
got-
if you look at all the ones that are outside, they're all pretty rough. Right.
Well, this has got that spectacular paint
It's
on it, though.
spectacular
Yeah.
right now. So
I think it would look gorgeous inside with the blue sofa and the red whatever those things are called, baffle
I
doodads.
don't know, don't we need to get approval from our architectural interior design firm that designed the, I have no idea.
That's us.
If it's okay with the board, I would temporarily house it in the terminal.
Are there
until our
any,
next
are there any objections? Just
No.
Okay,
No,
you're good,
I think
Scott.
that's great.
meeting. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all.
The only question I had for you, Scott, on your report is, on the KDOT, KAIP stuff, is there anything you need from this board on your grant timeline? Do you need any kind of feedback from us, or do we need to have a special meeting or anything? We need data.
That's a good question. I would say, the CIP committee that you guys had formed with the old board has given staff plenty of direction on what
Okay.
to apply for. Our top priority for the KAIP grants will be for design and reconstruction of 119, because that project is also in the city's capital improvement plan. We will apply for a design grant for the extension of taxiway D. I'll probably also go after funding from KDOT for the airport road and long-term parking improvements, because if you read my report, we did not get the airport terminal ATP grant for that project again, nor the KDOT cost share grant that we applied for that project. That's on the shelf, ready to bid. We just need to find a funding stream for it. It's also in our capital improvement, the city's capital improvement project list. So that's a good hunk of projects right there. So that would be my plan on the KAIP
Yeah.
grant applications, Clancy.
Yeah, my other two comments are, I noted that Harrisonville is eventually going to change its CTAF, and so we don't know when that's going to happen exactly, but it's probably at least a 56-day proposition.
That is correct. I did talk to the airport manager at Harrisonville. They filed the documents. They're just waiting for finalization of changing their frequency.
Yeah, and so I think, from what I've been hearing, I think we'll just leave ours where it is for now. And then the other thing I want to really comment on is, I'm really glad to hear that the firefighters came out and looked at the airport in November. This is something that we have needed to do for as long as I've been here, because as far as I know, there hasn't been any update on whatever firefighting capability the airport needs from, LFD. So I'm hoping that that'll develop into something solid down the road.
It will. We've talked about having a training exercise with our fire department when the weather is a little bit better, probably late spring, summer. And then KDOT Aviation, I don't know if you heard the comments, those of you that attended the KA meetings from Ray Seif. They are planning different levels of training for Kansas airports. And the bulk of Kansas airports are general aviation airports. And this would include firefighting training that KDOT Aviation will offer. And that'll be a little bit more focused for our type of airport versus the training that one of our captains attended down in Salina in September. They did attend ARF training that the Salina Airport offered, but really wasn't too applicable to our operation. So that I expect KDOT Aviation to come out with some training next year.
Okay, great. Anybody else have comments on the report? Okay.
No.
Aviation Youth Camp is the next item. I don't have any problem with May 24th. I don't know about anybody else.
That is the week after KU graduation, so that's traditionally
That's when we always do it.
when we've been hosting it.
Are
Is
you
anybody,
making a motion?
Last year we formed a committee. We had a couple board members participate. Jim and Carrie were on that. I would probably like to have a couple board members participate again. I know Sarah taught at the camp. Clancy taught as well. So
only because Carrie had to fly.
that's right.
Oh, it's fun. It's a good thing we do.
Okay, I think we should just leave it there for now unless
Do you
something
need a
else.
motion for that date?
Do we,
That'd be
Is that a
great.
motion?
okay, could I have a motion for having the Aviation Youth Camp, May 24th, 2025?
So moved.
Okay, Sarah?
I'll
Have a
second that.
Ron seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carrie's good. 6-0. Okay.
Great.
Who's second?
Ron?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Lloyd, I guess you're next, finally. Hallelujah.
Lloyd Hattrick with the Hattrick Air Service. I don't really have anything to report. I'm here to answer questions if you guys think. I did notice the December 14th date you were talking. That is a basketball game. North Carolina State, I believe. I don't know what that would do for our traffic in the terminal, so we concerned. FYI, isn't it from 9 to noon?
Yeah, I only expect the kids to be in the terminal for this careers in aviation presentation, then they'll be out and about walking around.
And it'd be fun for them to see the traffic, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Especially if the Jayhawk is sitting right there in the middle of the window.
Good.
Photo ops.
Photo ops, right.
Great. No, I'm don't really have anything else, so thank you.
Okay. I guess the next meeting is
February 5th.
February 5th. But we're
I
going to
think.
try to set up a meeting in January with the tenants. And I still actually believe that we probably need a basic orientation meeting for some of our new members at some point, so.
Melissa and I have been discussing that, yes.
Okay, because that's kind of how these 2 chapters got by me. So, okay, I guess if there's nothing else, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I'll do that.
Okay, Ron,
I'll second.
Jim second, all in favor, aye?
All right.
Carrie, are you good? Okay.
All right, thank
Unanimous,
you all.
we're good.
Great meeting.
Thank you.
That's not what I was aiming
Thanks,
for.
Larry Kellogg, for joining us online.
Thanks, Carrie.